Good morning, everyone. My name is Toni Schmidt. I am a gratitude coach and social media consultant in the Philadelphia area. And today I'm here with Paul Kirch, and he has the Boss Academy, which is a podcast. He's doing big things, helping a lot of people. And he kind of was a pinch hitter. I'm not a sports person, so I'm giving a bad analogy, but he joined in here at the last minute for me this morning so that we could give you guys some value and help you. If you've ever thought about podcasting, we're going to discuss it for a half hour, the benefits of it, some basic ideas about podcasting and how live streaming is affecting podcasting. So thank you, Paul, so much for being here this morning.
Oh, I'm honored, Toni. It's great to be here.
So do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Paul Kirch. I'm the host and founder of Boss Academy Radio, and Boss stands for Business Ownership Success Strategies. So that's what our show is really all about. I spent about 21 years in the marketing research industry before I went out and started my own company 9 years ago. Or actually, I'm sorry, 6 years ago. And when I started my company, I vowed I was going to help people who felt like I did for those 21 years, where I wanted to own a company, but I just didn't have the courage to do it. I didn't have the background in entrepreneurship, and I didn't have a lot of the resources that I felt I needed. And so when I did actually go out and start my company and built it from ground up, built accountability groups, built a team of people around me to be successful, I said, you know what, I want to give back and help others that feel the way that I used to feel. So I help the entrepreneur, and the small business owner. So that's the focus of my show.
Great. And how long have you been doing it? You said...
Yeah, so the show itself started last year. I was at a networking event hosted by Web.com. Web.com is kind of the precursor to the PGA, but they're a web hosting company, and they were here in Fort Worth, Texas, and they had a networking event called the Small Business Summit. They hosted before like every major PGA event, and so I went there. I wasn't even going to go that morning. And the speaker was great, but she was talking over the head of most of the people in the audience. She was talking about online marketing and web marketing, email marketing. And I had studied a lot of that stuff. I was very familiar. So I was really probably one of the only people in the audience that was ahead of the curve on what she was talking about. And during the Q&A, I raised my hand and said, I don't really have a question, but I said, I noticed there was some confusion over here. I wanted to provide some perspective. And the speaker was gracious. She was great about it. She let me provide some insights. And then I offered up a couple of tools that I use. And more people kept asking questions and pointing at me, and it was, it was flattering. But afterwards, I must have had probably 25 people come up, hand me business cards, tell me how great it was. And one of the women in the audience was this woman from KVC Radio over in Dallas, and she said, "You know what? That was great. Why don't you come on as a guest on one of our shows?" And I said, "Sounds wonderful." And I gave her my card. About a week later, she called me. She goes, "Look, I did my homework on you and looked you up. And after hearing what you had to say, we want to give you your own show." And I had this vision since I started my company for Boss Academy. And I thought, wow, what a really cool way to kind of get thrown into it. So I took on a live radio show for about 8 months, and I moved away from it because I started to look at the landscape of podcasting and what's happening out there, the engagement. Now, you talked about streaming media and live media and all these things. That's all new technology. Podcasting has been around for, upwards of 10 years. And it's just now getting to the point where it is really, truly viable for somebody like yourself to go out and start a podcast show because there's enough followers. iTunes starting to integrate, Apple, is integrating into new cars. So iTunes Podcast Connect is going to be built into almost all the new cars out there. And it's exciting things like that. And the technology's there. And, I came out of a live studio. So when I went into podcasting, production quality was really important to me. But you don't have to spend a lot of money on production. I tend to spend more than most. I bought a really expensive microphone. I have one of the guys that used to work with the radio station does production of my shows. So what I output sounds really good and has a nice professional aspect to it. But you don't have to do that. You can get started in podcasting really easily. I mean, there's people that podcast on their iPhones, so the technology's there now.
Right. Yeah, those are some great points, and thanks for sharing your story. I was thinking about the other day. I was thinking about how books, um, if you think about like why somebody buys a book, okay, that's similar to why somebody subscribes to a podcast, only a shortened version. Well, maybe not. Some ebooks are short, so it's the same kind of thing, right? But when you go on like live streaming, there's benefits to it, and everything's live. But I wonder if it's sometimes like buying an unedited book.
It
Like
can
if
be.
you buy something raw, are you getting a better product?
I think that raw and real works if you are somebody who comes across as, you're energetic, you've got good composure, you ask good questions, you say intelligent things, you're engaging. All that's great. It's no different than post production. If you're boring, post produced, it's almost worse than if you're boring in a live setting. But at the same time, in a live setting, people can just go click and walk away and never come back. And that they say you get one chance to make a first impression, and it's really true. However, we've proven that people have short-term memories online, and look, my first couple episodes out of the radio station were horrible. I won't say they were horrible, but I go back and listen to them, and my energy level was down because I didn't know what I was doing, and I was trying to figure my way. And then once I got into it, and man, started bringing on amazing guests. I mean, I've had John Sculley, the former CEO of Apple Computers. I've interviewed him 4 different times.
Wow.
People like John Warlow, Jillian Zoe Siegel. I've had amazing, amazing guests. Some of the top marketers in the world, top thought leaders. And that all happened because over time, I stuck with it. It's like blogging. I used to blog. I was a regular blogger. I blogged like 3 times a week, consistently, religiously. And then I took on a couple of client engagements that were kind of sucking the life out of me. And I was in part of my business where I was trading time for money. And so it's like I had to make some choices. And I stopped blogging for a while because I thought, I got this following. It's great, but I'm not doing anything with it. I can always come back to it. What I found is when I walked away from blogging and came back to blogging, those people that used to follow me and were loyal, they'd gone on to other things because you set a precedent for them. And so if you stick with something, if you start doing this live stream and you do it for a while and then you stop, you're going to find that the people that were following you won't follow you anymore. And
Right.
there's something that's psychological. It's also, they get pulled in other directions. So you have to be consistent. And I think over time
And that's where I am with like my blogging. I did the Tickles and Timeouts parenting blog for many years, since 2007. And taught myself search engine optimization and how to build a community, and fell in love with writing. And through this whole time, I think it's probably been about 5 years that I've thought about, should I do a podcast? How expensive is it? Should I make another commitment to something? What if it doesn't go as planned? And I think these are a lot of things that people wonder. We look at someone like you and we're like, he has all this equipment, of course we know you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And you mentioned before that you don't need much. What would you say to someone like me who was thinking about like pulling the trigger and making a commitment, but isn't sure?
Don't do it if you're not sure. You need to get yourself to the point where you are willing to do it. Can I talk a little about some of the mistakes I made early on?
That'd be great.
I come out of this live radio environment where I had this amazing production team around me, and I had a guy that sat in a production booth during every live show. And, if there was any pauses or any blunders, he would play little sound clips. I remember one time I froze. I couldn't think of something I was trying to think. And I was sitting there and it felt like 2 minutes and it was probably about 10 seconds, but he started playing the Jeopardy theme song, da, 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 da. It was great. And I had that type of support. When I went into podcasting, it was just me. And all of a sudden I thought, okay, now what? So first thing I did was reached out to one of my old production people at the radio station, said, can you help me? Sure. He does all my intros, outros. He puts my show together. That piece is great. But one of the things I was making a mistake on is I was not consistent as to when I was putting shows out. And that's one of the rules of thumb with podcasting. You'll find John Lee Dumas, who has one. top shows. I mean, he does 7 days a week. Now, he batch records. So he records a bunch of episodes and then rolls them out, and it makes it look like they're live every day. He has a huge following, but one of the things he says is you have to set a consistent schedule where people start to expect your show. And so I'd roll one out on Monday, and then I'd roll one out on Thursday. And I was wondering why my numbers weren't going up. And I got to the point where I was like really getting frustrated. And I was like, God, is anybody even listening to this show? Is it really worth it? What am I getting out of it? And so I started getting on a consistent schedule. And so I used to do one show a week. Right now, I think I have 55 episodes on iTunes and out on bossacademy.com. And I roll them out now once on Monday, once on Wednesday. And then on Friday, I tend to do a video show. And this is all audio, but we're going to talk a little bit about how you can actually take advantage of some of the mediums like Blab and things like that. So Mondays and Wednesdays. Now I'm looking at my numbers, and I'm getting several thousand downloads a month. And it all started to happen when I got on this consistent schedule and started to build up expectation, because the audience out there, when they go out to places like iTunes, there's some consistency as to when they go out and look for shows. I mean, you look and see that a lot of people launch shows on Mondays. Tuesdays are really busy on iTunes. Wednesdays tend to be another busy day for uploads. And so you have to kind of work around those schedules, because, if you launch a show live, there's a lot of options for them to go elsewhere. And you better have good content if you want a consistent following.
Right. That makes sense.
So let me talk a little bit about Blab and some other opportunities. Now, Blab's new. I mean, it's still in beta stage, and there's a lot of things about Blab I don't like. The video quality is grainy. The audio quality is not nearly what you get out of like a Google Hangouts on air. I record directly into recording software. So if I record a show on audio, I mean, it is studio quality sound. If I do it through Blab or something like that, I'm not going to get that. So I have to be willing to take a little bit of a sacrifice there. But the beautiful thing about recording on Blab, Google Hangouts on Air, or just doing a video show is you can strip out the audio. In fact, I did this yesterday. I pulled a show down that I recorded on Google Hangouts on Air, pulled the audio out. Now I've got a video post. I've got an audio podcast. Now I can take and have that transcribed, or I could use Dragon Speak or something like that and transcribe it myself. Now I can write articles out of that same content. I've got show notes that are SEO compatible. Now all of a sudden you've taken one piece of medium and you've transformed it into 4 or 5 different things that you can leverage. And there's people out there like Seth Green, who is he's a professional magician turned marketer, one of the top marketers in the country. In fact, Dan Kennedy at Glazer Kennedy, he's been nominated 3 times in a row as Marketer of the Year. He hasn't won yet, but he's going to win. He's got like 6 best-selling books, and one of his books is Podcast Marketing Magic. And the thing about his approach is he takes and does books from his podcast. He'll interview people, and then he'll have that transcribed. And now all of a sudden he puts together a book that is based off of these interviews.
Which makes it SEO friendly.
It's not just SEO friendly. It's getting him a huge following on Amazon and places like New York Times. And it can all be done with one piece of content. If you do one consistent thing, if I was to go back and do it all over, I would probably have built a video podcast show from the beginning, strip out the audio. Now I've got 2 pieces of content to work from. But I went with audio, and now I'm integrating some video, doing it a little differently, but it's the same.
You started at a different time.
Yeah.
Things are changing rapidly in the video world because of the way technology is evolving.
Yeah.
But I see, even when I follow podcasts now, the podcast that I subscribe to, for instance, what's his name? Oh, I can't remember. But half the time I look over at my phone, I'm like, oh, it's a video. So he's turned half of his podcast into video.
Yeah.
So I guess if you're spending the time making a podcast, why not have people look at you if it's an option, right?
Yeah, and there's a really big move to micro content. but you don't have to live in the micro content world. And I'll talk about what that means. So I am a contributor to a app called Oddvisor. And Oddvisor it's a really cool application. I know the founder. They're 3 minutes or less, insights, training tips, thought leadership pieces, whatever. And I'm in the likes of Seth Godin, Guy Kawasaki, all these amazing thought leaders. And here's Paul Kirch. And I provide sales and entrepreneurial tips through there. And it's amazing. 3 minutes or less, very digestible. So along comes this tool called Clamor, Clammr. Clamor is 18 seconds or less of an insight and introduction. So a lot of us podcasters have found that Clamor is this amazing tool to do an intro to one of our podcast episodes or some other thought leadership piece. And if somebody's on Clamor and they want to, they're willing to invest 18 seconds, which you always have 18 seconds, right? I mean, the busiest person in the world could probably spare 18 seconds, but you're listening to the Clamor Insight, and then we link it to a full podcast or full episode. They have the choice of going out and listening to that. And the traffic on Clamor is going through the roofs right now too. And so a lot of this micro content, it's important that we recognize that there's value in both. So you can record a longer piece, condense it down into a micro piece, and now you got the best of both worlds. So multi-purposing content today is really the only way to diversify. Because if you're only on Blab and that's all you ever do, what happens when Blab goes away and you built this following up on Blab? It's the same thing with the people that were out on Google using Google for all their traffic, and all of a sudden Google changes the rules. And now all of a sudden their business is shut down and they're going, oh my God, what do I do? You know, same thing with Facebook. Facebook changes rules. We need to diversify.
They shut down yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you hear about that?
Yeah. But if you're not diversifying today, it's kind of it's a mistake. And I used to think that was the hard thing. Now I've learned that if you start at the top and break it down, it's easier.
Right.
But yeah,
I almost wish there was like, maybe somebody has made an infographic of like, you know, I'm a very like visual person, that, you know, if you have any resources for us or could show us, you know, I encourage people to follow Paul if you're listening live or the recorded version to get some ideas. But, you know, there's so many platforms now. I think that's like the overwhelming thing. It used to be when, you know, in 2007, when I started all this, it was like you either started a blog or nothing, or you wrote a book.
Right.
And those were like, and I guess you could do a radio show no, you really couldn't at that time. You had to like work for a radio station, and that wasn't, that wasn't your content.
You could always get a radio show. The thing is about having a radio show, even when I got a radio show, it seemed so daunting. It seemed like this big world. They've always been looking for good contributors. The difference is between AM radio 10 years ago as today is there's just no following, no audience out there. So a lot of people have moved away from it. And that's what I found. I mean, I had a show that was with a great production team, great company, but they don't subscribe to Arbitron numbers. I don't think any of the AM stations do, because the numbers are so paltry. They can't justify the expense. Plus, they don't really want to share those numbers with their hosts, because they're just depressing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I did some advertising, worked with an advertising agency for a while, and we talked to a lot of the radio stations, and it's a different world. What would you suggest, like, if people are creative and they want an outlet and they have something, they're an expert in something, or they want to add value in whatever they're good at, do you think that certain platforms are better? Like, for instance, people tell me I'm great on video. I imagine that like not everybody feels comfortable on video, or maybe they have a great voice, or maybe they're a good writer. I think that, you know, an artist, which we all are, we are all artists. Is it important, do you think, knowing what platform is right for you? I mean,
Yeah,
I've
well,
seen people write, and they're incredible writers that you can actually picture everything that they're saying, and the words they use are just so beautiful. What do you think about that?
100%. Okay, so I've got I won't mention her name, but I've got an accountability partner. She's a podcaster. And we both belong to Podcasters Paradise, which is a program John Lee Dumas set up. And she's got a great show on nutrition and food and all this. But her show, God, she's listening, she's going to shoot me. But her show on audio, I think, is a little bit, she's not engaging. She's not like, you don't really feel her personality coming through. I talk to her on video once a month, and I'm like, wow, she's got this personality. She's got so much media experience, and she comes out of the media space. She's done a lot of TV. And so I told her, I said, you should start recording your blog on video and stripping out the audio, because what's happening is you're not engaging like you are on video. Because when it's just audio and you're talking to a blank screen, you sometimes fall in the trap of getting monotone, and it's like you're sitting there thinking, what's the next thing I want to say? You forget to raise your voice and have pitch and speed and all these things, because you don't see yourself, and it's different. And that was one of the things that, coming out of live radio, that was one of the best lessons for me, is I was forced to focus on those things, or the show just wasn't going to work. In fact, that was one of the first week I was asking her, well, so what if people aren't into this? And she goes, well, we could always get another host to join you. You can have a guest host or something like that. And I didn't want to do that. So I had to find a way to engage the audience just with my voice. Because when you've got video, you got facial expressions. You can see I'm smiling. I might sound boring, but you can see I'm smiling. But on audio, you have no concept. So yes, know where it's best for you. And there's I jokingly say I have a face for audio, but be honest, some people, you have this amazing smile. No wonder people say you're good on video. You're very engaging. But some people don't have that. So maybe audio is a better format, or they have to be honest with what the expectations are. And I think that's being a big part of it, is honesty. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we want to rely on our friends. We want to consult with our friends. We want our friends and family. Oh, how do we do? How do we do? You're always going to get the best answer from your family. Oh, you were amazing, darling. You were so good. But let's get a real following, get some real feedback from real people that can be unbiased. And it's going to sometimes sting. I kept waiting for my first negative feedback. And fortunately, I've been very blessed to get a lot of positive feedback. If you go out on iTunes, I think I have 135-star reviews. I actually, there's one outlier that's a 4-star. And I don't say that to brag. I'm proud of that. But I use that as a litmus test to say, am I doing something good? Am I engaging people? Is this working? If it's not, then I have to go back to the drawing board. So get real feedback, and not just relying on a little consult of friends. You need to find somebody who can be honest with you.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I couldn't agree more. There's so many things going on in my head, more questions that I want to ask you. So I would love if you'd be interested to do this again, so we can talk more, maybe even in the evening sometime, because it seems like a lot more people are available right now. Everybody's getting ready for work or doing some things, getting their kids ready for school and other things. But particularly bloggers, I think it would be good to, I know a lot of bloggers that have always thought about doing this and wondering, like, what's the investment? How should I do it? And your ideas just have been really good.
Do I have just a minute to maybe talk about some cheap and ways to get started in podcasting? Okay, so if you want to do video podcasting, if you want to do that, and you can use video podcasting, strip out the audio. If you want to do that, that's great. Google Hangouts on Air, it's free, right? All you need is I'm wearing headphones, right? So, but I also have, if I'm doing audio only, I don't wear these generally on video because they're a little bit obnoxious, but they are amazing headphones. I wear these when I do video. Audio, because the sound quality is so much better. So you need headphones because you don't want to get that echo or feedback. And invest in a microphone, but you don't need to have And this is a $400 high OPR 40. But you can buy a blue snowball as long as you're in a room that doesn't have a lot of external noise around you. You can have a microphone like a blue snowball or a blue Yeti, and the sound quality is phenomenal. In fact, I've got a blue snowball that I use for webinars and things like that.
And how much is that, the Yetis?
$60, and the Yeti is 120. The blue snowball's 60. I would recommend the Yeti, but you can buy a nice microphone for $100. And then from there, if you're doing USB, now I don't run a USB microphone. This microphone plugs into a mixer, and I use the mixer for various reasons. It gives me a lot of control. You don't need to do that. And a lot of people say, don't ever buy a mixer for podcasting. I don't agree with that, because the mixer is the greatest thing ever once you get it figured out. However, it is a huge learning curve. And had I not come out of a radio station, I would have never done it. I would have gone straight to a USB microphone. But your investment there is next to nothing. And then you need some recording software. I think it's Adobe Audition is $17 a month, $19 a month. I use Cool Edit Pro, which is the professional version of what Adobe Audition used to be. So I don't have a monthly fee, but I bought Sony's software. I can't remember, Sony SoundForge, I think, for $100, and it works amazing. There's tools out there like Audacity that are free. So you don't have to spend money. It's not money. It's more the investment of time and commitment. And then don't get scared off when it takes you a long time to build a following. I've been doing this, on podcasts since January, and I'm just now to the point where I've got a few thousand downloads a month. I was at one point going, hello, is anyone listening? Hello. But it was worth the investment. And now I'm like really getting, it's like every day I get feedback from people, and it's really empowering.
That's awesome, Paul. That's really great. So if people want to know more about you, where can they find you? Can you put a link in the side?
Sure. Go out to bossacademy.com. I have a sales consulting agency called Actus Sales Intelligence, which is ACTUS And that, sales leadership, sales consulting, sales strategy, lead generation, those things, great. But where I'm really passionate about helping people today is bossacademy.com. And I'm putting it in the sidebar. And you can email me directly at info@bossacademy.com. Those come right to me. Or out on Twitter, you can go to Paul Kirch, PaulKirch.
Great. And why is bossacademy.com different from any of the other resources for entrepreneurs?
Yeah, great question. Because, I spent 21 years wanting to own a business, and I was scared to do it. And when I did take the leap of faith, and, I had a wife who was very supportive, put her foot in the back of my small side of my back and pushed me off the ledge, I vowed I was going to give back and make a difference. So there's, my commitment is to make a big difference. And I think another reason it's different is because I come from a sales consulting, sales coaching background. I bring a perspective that is extremely powerful. And I don't say that to brag, but I think that's one of the things that there's so much value. And that's why my show's going over well, because it's not just about me interviewing guests and relying on their expertise. I'm engaged in the conversation. And I'm not trying to overpower them, but I bring so many great insights. And then the other thing is I'm building an expert network out there where we've got so many great free resources. We've got people that are amazing thought leaders that are contributing great content and great pieces of information to the entrepreneur. So, our goal is to be the last boss you'll ever need. And we really strive to be that, because the world needs entrepreneurs to be successful. We really do. We're at a point where job security isn't what it was once was. The reason I started my company is I got my company that I loved got acquired by a company that I just hated the culture. I hated the way they micromanaged us. I couldn't stomach the idea of going back to work for someone else. That's the world we live in. So many people are being displaced, or they're finding they're not being protected or fulfilled like they should within a company. And they're going out and starting these own ventures. So let's give them the tools to be successful.
Yeah, starting your own business is not easy. I think it's 80% of businesses fail, something like that.
It's the toughest job I've ever had, but it's the most rewarding. And there are so many things about being an entrepreneur. Like, I feel guilty when I'm not at the office. Now, that's horrible. I have 2 young kids. So I really have to fight this balance, but I feel guilty because I know that my success depends on me being here today. Now, the goal is to get to a point where you have a company that can operate without you. But that's not where I am, and that's not where a lot of entrepreneurs are. But having strategies that'll help you get there. We could talk about that topic on itself. So
Yeah, that would be great. That would be awesome. All right. Well, I look forward to talking to you again soon. I'm actually going to be doing another Blab here starting in a few minutes about a book club that I'm starting for Jab, Jab, Cross, Right Hook. I always get the name of it mixed up for some reason. But everybody, have you read that book?
I haven't, but I've heard so many great things about it.
Yeah, yeah. So, so I'm going to be starting a book group for that, and we're going to be, discussing it and going through it together, because sometimes it's hard to find the time to read some of these resources. We're constantly hearing like, oh, you should read this book, you should read that book. This would be a great resources for you, and then time flies by. So every week we're going to be talking about this book and getting ideas so that we can help and empower people to become better entrepreneurs through social media.
Can I offer another book?
That would be great.
Forgive my Starbucks napkin bookmark, but Getting There, A Book of Mentors by Jillian Zoe Siegel.
Okay, great.
Getting There, A Book of Mentors. It's phenomenal because what she did, she interviewed people like Warren Buffett, Kathy Ireland, she's Ian Schrager, Anderson Cooper, amazing people, amazing thought leaders. And it took her like 2 years to get some of these interviews secured, because these people are like, they're
Big time.
Yeah, big time. And so she had such a hard time getting these interviews, but once she did, she uncovered that every single successful person in this book that achieved millions and billions of dollars in success, they all struggled at some point in their career. And some of us get frustrated because we're not getting there. We're not finding our path. But that's sometimes in the darkness is when we find the light. And then this book, man, it really brings things to the surface. One of my favorite parts is Warren Buffett, who we all know Warren Buffett is this great, amazing leader. He was deathly afraid of public speaking. He tried to take a public speaking course in college and dropped out of it because he was deathly afraid. He forced himself to go back and take a Dale Carnegie public speaking course. Today, he's known as one of the best orators in the world, right? In his office in Omaha, he doesn't have any of his advanced degrees or certificates, which he has several. He has this little framed diploma from Dale Carnegie on public speaking on his wall.
That's great.
As a reminder of how he got where he is.
Yeah, and that's something I was going to bring up earlier when we were talking about knowing what platform you're best on. It's also a matter of stepping out of your comfort zone as well. I know some popular people who are in social media, and they've done amazing videos and are very successful with all these webinars, all these videos, and they've said before how they stepped out of their comfort zone. They don't like doing video. And I'm like, really? You don't like doing that? I was so surprised because they're so successful with it. So half of it is knowing who you are and what you bring to the table, but the other half is sometimes stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, and some of us, you hate the way you look on video. I used to hate the way I sounded on audio. The reason I became good at sales or better at sales is because I would record myself on sales calls and on the phone and listen to these as in the car. I would burn them to CD and drive down the freeway, and I'm living in San Francisco listening to myself. And I pull up to people at a stoplight, and I was embarrassed. I'm in the car by myself, windows up, but I'm sitting there embarrassed that, oh my God, I can't believe this is how I sound. Because I used to do, I broke myself of all those habits because I recorded myself. You got to get to the point where you're comfortable seeing yourself and hearing yourself.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, I would love to talk to you again about some of this stuff, because I think we're helping a lot of people. I know you're helping a lot of people. You bring so much to the table. I really appreciate you jumping in at the last minute here today to discuss these things. I hope people follow you on Blab and follow you on Twitter. And even on Facebook. Do you have a group on Facebook, or are you just?
I don't have a group, but I have a Boss Academy page, and I think it's Boss Academy Radio. And I'm embarrassed that I don't know that for sure, but let me look it up real quick. Because I always just send people the link. Boss Academy Radio on Facebook. So yeah, it's Boss Academy Radio.
Okay,
and
great.
So you can follow me out there, and I'm posting interviews, posting insights. Bossacademy.com is probably the best resource to go to.
Great. Thank you so much. And
Tony, I don't wake up early for a lot of people, but
I feel flattered. And if anybody
worth it.
wants to know more about me, you can find me at Knockout Solutions for social media consulting ideas. And if you want to know about gumption, grace, and gratitude, which I talk about all the time, I have a Facebook group that I would love for you to join. If you want to live a life with more passion and you want to find a job that brings you passion and you want to learn how to engage showing appreciation so that you can be more successful not only in your business and in your life, I'd love to have you over there. And feel free to hop on the next Blab that I'm doing too. So Paul, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone listening. And I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks, Paul. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tony.